What the? Oh. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We'll be starting in exactly 3.5 minutes. So make any final adjustments, make yourself comfortable, grab a drink, and we will be starting in literally 3 minutes. We just ask you all, please, to mute yourselves. You'll have opportunities to share. We'll give you opportunities to unmute yourself, but just to prevent any background noise, if you could unmute yourselves, mute yourselves, that'd be great. Welcome, everybody. We are almost ready to start, about a minute to go. And just for those of you here, it would be lovely to get an understanding where everybody's from. If you could drop into the chat your name and where in the world you are. We normally get a good spread of people from all around the world. So let's see how far afield our audience is from today. So just pop into the chat your name and where you're from. Welcome from wherever you are, far and wide. So how many of you have ever attended one of our webinars before? Oh, yeah. Wonderful. So we've got a few repeat offenders. Wonderful. Welcome back. How many of you are attending one of our webinars for the first time? Okay. Hopefully, if this is the first time that you're here, you're going to find today's session useful and valuable, and lots of opportunities to discuss, share, and explore what this subject means to us. And the subject that we're here to talk about is overwhelm. We are recording this session, which we made available to those that weren't able to attend live or may miss parts of today's session, or also an opportunity for you to share this discussion with friends, family, and colleagues should you find it useful and valuable. Just so you're aware, if there's anything of a personal, confidential, or sensitive nature that is shared in this session, we will edit that out before we share the recording. That's purely for a safeguarding perspective. So how many of you have ever felt overwhelmed? Okay, I can see several hands. I'd be surprised if all of you at some point hadn't experienced moments in your life where things felt a bit too much and you felt overwhelmed. How many of you would like to learn techniques or strategies to be able to manage feelings of overwhelm? Again, many of you. I'm hoping so, given that that's what today's session is about. So I'm hoping that you're looking forward to considering different ways to be able to deal with overwhelm. But on the flip side, how many of you have never ever felt overwhelmed and not really interested in managing how you deal with overwhelm? Okay. I thought I'd check just in case you turned up for the wrong webinar. And if you aren't interested in understanding how to deal with overwhelm and have never experienced it, yet you are still here, welcome anyway. I'm hoping that you'll find something useful and valuable from today's discussion, or you're able to contribute your thoughts and perspectives. So for those of you that don't know that are here for the first time, my name is Neil Shah. I'm the Chief De-Stressing Officer of an international non-profit organisation called the Stress Management Society. We have a research and consultancy arm called International Wellbeing Insights. Through both sides of the organisation, we have been working tirelessly for the last 21 years to essentially create a happier, healthier, more resilient world, a world that doesn't need us anymore. Feels like we're further away from that goal today than ever before, and that's not through lack of effort. And these monthly sessions that we put on are just a way for us to reach out, share some of the things that we've learned or developed along the way, and essentially be able to support people to recognize and address the challenges that are likely to affect their mental and emotional state. This is a workshop, not a webinar. As much as it's kind of labeled as a webinar, it's a two-way interactive discussion. It's great to see that so many of you got your cameras on already. There'll be lots of opportunities for us to get involved, to discuss, to share, explore our thoughts, feelings, perspectives around the things that we hear to talk about. Being able to see each other means that it feels safer and you're more likely to open up when you can actually see the people that you're talking to. And that's one of the things that we found that is quite challenging in the world that we find ourselves in. It's very easy to turn up to meetings or sessions and have your cameras and microphone off, sit there in the background and watch it like you'd be watching something on television. This isn't that. This isn't something you watch while you're eating your lunch. This is something you get to participate in. So I will be asking questions. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your stories, your experiences. I want you to seek clarification. You're welcome to disagree with me. To tell me to slow down. You know, I'm from London. Sometimes I get excited and speak very quickly. So there will be lots of opportunities for you guys to interact. So if you have something to share, just put your hand or your virtual hand up, unmute yourself. We'd love to hear from you. But you can also put messages in the chat. My colleague Abby, give us a wave.
Hiya.
That's the lovely Abby waving at you. She's my co-pilot for today. So any comments or questions or thoughts that you put into the chat, she'll be bringing that into the discussion. And any sort of relevant bits of information or links that I share, she will put that into the chat so you can easily access that. So again, for those of you that attended our sessions before, you'll know that we do always set up some ground rules to ensure we have a safe space to have this discussion. And some of the key ones are: be present. This is only an hour. And I'm sure you can think of 100, if not 1,000 things that you used to do, that you could be doing rather than sitting here in this session with me. I'm sure some of you are getting a little bit stressed about the fact that things need to get done that won't get done because you're here in this session. And by the fact that it was like almost 700 people that signed up, and we've only got 300 people here so far, means that there was a lot of people that wanted to be here, intended to be here, but life got in the way. They were too stressed or overwhelmed and weren't able to actually make it to this session. I'm going to encourage you, now that you're here, approach this as an act of mindfulness. Be present. It's only an hour. If you can limit distraction by turning off the technology off or on silent, that will ensure you get maximum value from this time. Participate. What you put in will determine what you take out. Even if that's kind of, you know, expressing to the screen, even if no one else is listening, but to engage. And if a question comes up, to be able to answer it for yourself. Don't be a passive observer. Participate. Be open, honest, and respectful, particularly if people are sharing things that you don't agree with or you don't subscribe to. Have an open mind to new ways of doing things, new ways of looking and exploring things. If you are making statements, own them in terms of how it's impacted you. So I statements rather than you or they or it made me feel this way. And we also ask for confidentiality. If people share things within this session that impact that are of a sensitive or a personal nature, we ask that that doesn't get shared outside of this session. Only two caveats to that. For safeguarding reasons, if anyone mentions anything that impacts your safety or the safety of others, that is one of the reasons that we might need to take things out of this session. And the second issue is anything that Abby or myself offer, anything that we share, any of the slides or the information we offer you, you have our full permission to share that with anyone that is willing to listen. So are we all happy to agree to those ground rules? Anyone got anything they'd like to add, take away, disagree with? Okay, great. And always feel free to drop a message in the chat or let us know if there's anything you'd like to amend to this. Okay. So we are here to talk about overwhelm, specifically how to overcome overwhelm. What does overwhelm mean to you? Before we look for the solution, we need to understand the question or the nature of the challenge. What is overwhelm? So if you've got any thoughts on this that you're happy to share, feel free to put your hand up. We can put you on to mic and you can share your thoughts, and also you can obviously put your thoughts into the chat as well. So Zoe Webster, you've got your hand up. So would you like to share? What are your thoughts around overwhelm? Got Zoe Webster. Zoe.
Hi, yeah. I was just going to say, for me, it's normally having too much stuff going on at once,
Sure.
and usually things that sort of trigger emotions. So sometimes it just feels like trying to hold too many different things in my brain at one time.
Absolutely. So too much to do, too much consuming your brain, feeling like you're struggling to cope with it all. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, for me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Zoe. Next on my list, I've got Zoe Williamson. Two Zoes to kick us off today. Zoe, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Yeah, again, just having too many tasks to do all at once and trying to prioritize and get things done in deadlines.
Okay, yeah. So you know, prioritizing deadlines, conflicting tasks, objectives, etc. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. We'll take one more. Radek, would you like to share? We've lost Radek, I believe. Debbie Willis. Okay, well, we'll come back to your shares. Let's have a look at what we've got in the chat. Abby, what are people sharing in the chat? What is overwhelm?
We've got a lot of messages. We've got panicking and not being able to cope, feeling like you're drowning, feeling like you can't cope with everything in your life, conflicting priorities, not being able to function properly, lack of sleep, feelings of anxiety, risk of failure, not having the skills and tools to overcome stress, not being in control, and that's most of them. A lot of them are saying very similar things.
Thank you, Abby. Here's the thing. More and more people are feeling overwhelmed with the pace and pressure and demands of modern life, particularly now where you wake up in the morning and you are hit by a tsunami of information literally the moment you open your eyes. What's the first thing most people do, or within the first few minutes of waking up, if not immediately?
Check their phone.
Absolutely. And it's not just overwhelm is hitting us, we're inviting and creating overwhelm in our life. Because you start the day, you pick this up, and you'll check your WhatsApps and your telegrams and signals and your text messages and your emails, and you check Instagram and TikTok and Facebook or whatever else. People could end up just in the first hour of waking up have spent 45, 50 minutes on the phone. And that's information that you're inviting into your life. And then during the course of the day, we're constantly being hit by a barrage, a tsunami of information. And it's no wonder that we feel overwhelmed. And part of this is the lack of control that we feel that we have over the demands that we're being subjected to, even though some of those demands we've invited in don't necessarily need to be there. So part of today's discussion is about creating choice. It's about considering how we can make choices that are more likely to give us the results that we want, rather than making choices that give us the results that we don't want. And this is really where overwhelm, often we don't feel like we have a choice. As many people have said, that they feel stuck, they feel like they're drowning, they feel like everything's too much. So that often, and correct me if you believe that I'm wrong here, is because we have chosen to take on too much. And I know that when you feel overwhelmed, it doesn't feel like you have a choice, but part of this is to identify what do we have a choice over and what do we not. So to really highlight some of the things we're going to discuss for the rest of this session, I need to do a little bit of a recap of our bridge analogy. So those of you who attend previous sessions will probably have seen this before. So I'm going to go over this relatively quickly. But let's just imagine a bridge. This is Tower Bridge in London. It doesn't matter which bridge. It could be Golden Gate Bridge, Sydney Harbour Bridge. But on this particular day, Transport for London have gone on strike, parked their red double-decker buses onto the bridge. The Black London cabs have got involved because they're fed up with Uber stealing on their business. So we've got the black taxis on there as well. The animals at London Zoo have managed to organise a great escape, and they've all rushed onto the bridge because they smelt some food on there. We've got the protesters that are out every weekend that have decided to climb to the top of Tower Bridge as part of their protest. And yeah, particularly for those of you in the UK, you will have noticed that this has been an extremely wet and soggy year. The weather has led to a surge of a tidal surge on the River Thames, which has caused the Thames barrier to breach. And HMS Belfast has managed to get washed onto the bridge. And then, in addition to that, Heathrow Airport's had to temporarily shut down, and they've landed a couple of Airbus A380s on there. If I keep going in that way, put more pressure, more load, more demand onto the bridge, what would happen eventually? It's going to be the
collapse.
It will collapse, right? Absolutely. It will ultimately collapse. It doesn't matter how well constructed the bridge is. Every bridge on the planet, if enough pressure is applied for long enough, it will ultimately collapse. Before it collapses, how do we know? What clues, what signs, what feedback will we get to suggest the bridge is not bearing the load effectively?
Cracks will appear.
Start to
Yeah, absolutely. Cracking, creaking, fractures, bowing, buckling. When it's giving you that feedback, it hasn't collapsed yet, but it's threatened to do so. What are your options? What's one of the two options you've got available to you to prevent the bridge from going on to collapse?
Relieve some of the
Remove some of
pressure.
the stresses.
Okay, so
Sorry.
release some of the pressure, take some of the stuff off. Yeah. Or?
Prevent any more going on.
Yeah. That's not necessarily going to better equip the bridge to cope, but it's going to prevent it from going on to collapse. I've seen a few messages in the chat to reinforce or strengthen the bridge. Absolutely. Take the load off or make the bridge stronger. Put some concrete blocks and iron girders underneath to better equip it to bear the load effectively. Essentially, our definition of stress is where the demand made on an individual exceeds their capacity or the resources they have available to cope with that demand. Basically, when there's more on the bridge than the bridge is able to bear. Do we agree every human being also has an ultimate break point. Doesn't matter who you are, how mentally tough you are, how broad your shoulders are. Every human being, if enough pressure is applied for long enough, will also collapse just like the bridge. Would we agree with that statement? All right. Every human has an ultimate break point. So when we come to this conversation around overwhelm, we can compare overwhelm to the point where the bridge is cracking and unable to hold the load. It's not collapse yet. For me, overwhelm would be a sign of a bowing and buckling bridge, not a collapsed bridge. Because when your bridge has collapsed, that's where you potentially had a breakdown or have become suicidal or taken action against that, or it's quite serious. Bowing and buckling for me would be a sign that someone is struggling to cope with the pressures and demands that they're being subjected to on a daily basis. Does that make sense? So when does stress become overwhelm? And ultimately, extended periods of stress will lead you to the point where you're exhausted and you're struggling. When stress becomes too much for us to handle, we experience that sensation of overwhelm. It occurs when it's not necessarily one thing, but it's a whole variety of different challenges on your bridge. And sometimes you just get frozen into inaction. You don't know where to start. You can't get anything done. You don't know how to take action. We start to feel hopeless. And to the point where, sadly, many people are struggling to function in their daily lives. So who could share examples or experiences either you've had yourself or that you've observed and noticed around others that were experiencing overwhelm? What led to that? What was the kind of experience? What happened to you? Go for it, Helen.
Is that me?
Yes, Helen Patterson.
Right, sorry.
Hi.
I didn't know how many Helens there were. Yeah, I don't mind sharing. So a couple of years ago, I ended up being signed off work, but it wasn't because of work stress. It was a combination of loads of stuff just piling on, like the bridge analogy. So I was getting divorced. I was all of a sudden looking after 2 kids by myself, working full time. There was something else as well. I can't remember because I can't really remember it all very clearly. But lots and lots of things going on. I think there were about 3 things. So I felt like I didn't have control over any aspect of my life. Not that we do anyway. And a lot was changing. So it felt like I was hanging on with my fingertips a bit. And then, yeah, so my bridge broke. And I took time off work and just slowly, I wasn't suicidal or anything like that, but what I needed was I slept for about 2 weeks and I got family and friends to kind of support me and look after the kids and just started building things up slowly. And I don't think I'd recognized that I was breaking at all, really, but I actually think it was the best thing that's happened to me. So so there's an example. I was trying to be quick because other people might want to talk.
Thank you, Helen. I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability. And would you mind if I asked a couple of questions? Because I think what you've shared is really valuable for everybody. And let me know your thoughts in the chat if you are able to relate to some aspects of Helen's story, because I am as well. I had this similar sort of experience in 2003. That's why I set this organization up, where everything went wrong at the same time, and the depths of which I had what was described at the time as a breakdown. I now see it as a breakthrough because it led me to the path to where I am today. But obviously at the time, it wasn't a particularly easy or comfortable place to be. At the depths of which I did get to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore, and I took action against that, and thankfully I failed. But it's really wonderful to hear you feel comfortable to share your story, because the more people that share their story, the more we start to destigmatize this subject. Now, the question I wanted to ask you is, when you got to the point where you found yourself shutting down and you needed to literally sleep for a couple of weeks, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Can you remember?
Oh, that's a really good question. I remember when I went off work that I was so I work in the NHS, and I have clinics and support other people, and I'm all very much there for everyone else, and put myself at the bottom of the pile, usually tend to. That's what I need to be mindful for. But then I sat in my car at the clinic, about to have a busy clinic, and I couldn't get out, and I just started crying. And I don't know. I mean, now I'd recognise that, but that, I got to that point, and I phoned my manager at the time and said, I can't go into it. I can't do this anymore. I'm going home. And I went home, and then I think I rang my mum, and I think I rang the doctor at some point. But so I don't think there was a specific event. I think it just, I don't know, just one morning I couldn't get out of the car.
So it's interesting because as much as you may not describe that as a specific event, for me, it sounds quite a specific event. Something that you do
Okay.
every day. You're in the car, you're about to get out and start your day of clinics, right? So it's just it's a normal thing. It doesn't feel like a big deal. But often this is what happens when people are overwhelmed. You have the straw that breaks the camel's back, and sometimes it can be the most insignificant of things. And when you look back on it, it's like that could not possibly have been the reason that my bridge collapsed. But if your bridge is grown in bow and buckling, is just about bearing the load, it only needs sometimes a little feather to cause the bridge to collapse. So this is interesting, and I'm glad that you were able to share that, because this is what I want you all to recognize. It's not often the big things that cause the bridge to collapse. That's what creates the pressure points and the load. And often it's something that happens, which could be just a day-to-day thing. Like you go into the supermarket and they don't have your favorite cereal, whatever that you wanted to buy. And that could be enough to cause a complete meltdown. I personally can relate to that. And this is why understanding and recognizing overwhelm is crucial, because we're starting to consider the load factors on the bridge, the impact it's having, and then considering what action that we can take to do something about it. Now, remember, with the actual bridge, we said that you can either remove the load or we can reinforce the bridge. So that's what I want to spend some time today talking about. But just before we get to that, I want to ask you, how is your bridge coping currently with the load that you're experiencing in your life right now, today and this week, this month? Is your bridge strong? Is it coping well, or is it bowing and buckling? And just whilst you're sharing your points there, Abby, was there anything in the chat with regards to sort of overwhelm and people's experience of overwhelm that we can share?
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that they agree with that experience. And there's a lot of comments on physical symptoms, migraines, headaches, panic attacks. Someone said they had symptoms of multiple sclerosis, and a few more. And just all the pressures of having a job, being a parent as well. And I think that's most of it.
And with regards to the follow-up question around how people's bridges are doing, what have we got? How's everyone's bridges doing?
Do you want me to read from the chat?
Yeah, if anyone's got any thoughts in the chat, yeah.
Got a lot of comments about it bending and creaking at the moment. Some saying it's better now, but it used to be weaker.
Well, good.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's explore this. So whether your bridge is currently strong, or it is bowing and buckling, I think it's really worthwhile exploring strategies to deal with the load that creates the overwhelm. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. And if we have some time at the end, I will share a strategy with you as to just one simple thing that you can do to make your bridge stronger should you find yourself feeling overwhelmed. So you've got the load, you've got the demand, you've got the responsibilities and the commitments. It's not always easy to get rid of the load, unless obviously it gets to a point where it's having a serious impact on your life, like with Helen, where she literally could not go into work. So she had to go home and take those 2 weeks out just to rest and recover. If that is a possibility or an opportunity, great. But if not, what other options do we have to deal with the load that we're subjected to? What are your options? What could you do? So it'd be great to hear from some of you. So let's see who's got their hands up. Okay. Who have we got first? Louise Marshall and Claire.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, go for it, Louise.
I think about taking a holiday because I would really like to do that. But then I think about what I'm going to come back to. And then sometimes then I don't want to take a holiday because I'm afraid of what I'm going to come back to.
Yeah. And Louise, that's an interesting one because obviously going on holiday is wonderful. Until you get to the last couple of days, you think about the fact that all the stuff that's on your bridge, you've just literally left the bridge behind, escaped, but you've still got to go back to the bridge. And if it was overloaded before you went, chances are more load has been added whilst you've been away, or the stuff that's on there might have got a bit bigger. So you haven't actually dealt with the problem as such. I'm not suggesting for a second not to go on holiday, not at all. What I am suggesting is our quest to better deal with the load should be in addition to regular holidays, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, what have we got in the chat, Abby? What are people's thoughts around what options and choices do we have about dealing with the load?
A lot of people are saying talking to other people, having therapy, meditation, starting new hobbies, being more intentional in their actions,
Right.
taking a step back and not taking all of it on,
Mhm.
and making time in your day for things you enjoy, and diaries of your thoughts and feelings, so journaling.
That all sounds like wonderful strategies. We'll take one more from the group. Claire, you've got your hand up. Have you got anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I've had a year of CBT counselling. I've been really lucky. I had a bad year last year, months off work. And one thing that's come out of this for me, so my bridge is pretty fragile at the moment, as still, but it's setting boundaries for, because all of these things that people are suggesting, going for a walk and doing all these things, everything has still got to be fitted in. And the thing I didn't have was time. I needed 35, 40 hours in a day to do everything, to feel like I could do everything, and becoming real that is impossible. And setting boundaries of, saying to friends, now I need time for me. And I actually write me in my diary for time that is for me. And that time, don't get me wrong, might be sleeping. That time might be actually having a shower and getting clean and affecting personal hygiene, because that's not been an option for me. Might be eating something fairly healthy, or it might be going outside or just sitting and staring at a wall. Doesn't necessarily mean it is all bubbling, bouncy and fantastic. What you see out there is sort of fancy self-care on the internet. But setting those boundaries and saying, right now, I cannot do that. At work, I can't do that. Give me, what else are you going to take off me for me to deliver that for you well? And you just need to really try and erect strong boundaries if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Thank you for sharing, Claire. So what we're going to do is, for the time that we've got left, we're going to cover 3 specific things that can really help to deal with overwhelm. We're going to cover prioritization and what that means, and I'm going to share with you a model that will hopefully be able to better equip you to look at the load on your bridge and consider a more effective way of being able to deal with it, which also kind of encompasses a time management technique. We're going to talk about a word that we're all heard. It's a very common word. It's a very short word, but a very difficult one for many of us to use. And we're also going to talk about a strategy just to be able to understand how we can assert a bit more control over the things that we're being subjected to. So let's start with that. Something that we call the top principle, to consider things that are totally under your control, things that are outside of your control, and things that you have partial control over. So let's start with the things that are totally under your control. What is totally under your control? Things that you experience on a day-to-day basis. What is totally under your control? What are your thoughts on that? So just coming back to those who've got your hands up. Let's see. Lisa Tiju, would you like to share? What is totally under your control?
Getting dressed.
Getting dressed, absolutely. Putting your clothes on. That is totally within your control. If you have clothes to wear, you get to decide whether you put them on or take them off. Tara's saying your reaction, and so is Joe. Interesting. Let's explore that. Let's do a bit of an experiment. If in this session I say to you, there's almost 350 of us here now, and I say to you, I am so blessed and honored to be here with you in this session. Of all the sessions I've ever run over the last 21 years, you guys are literally the most incredible, wonderful, beautiful humans I've ever been fortunate enough to spend some time with. I'm so grateful and honored to be here with you right now. How might you react to those words? If I say that to you right now, how might you react to that?
Not believing.
Okay, Cassie's not believing me. All right, she's like, what's he after? What's he up to? What does he need? What other reactions might you get? How else might people react to those words?
Might feel encouraged.
You might feel encouraged, yeah. You might feel flattered. You might feel warm, fuzzy feeling. Absolutely. But what if I turn around to you and I said, in the 21 years I've been working in this field, you 350 odd people are the worst, nastiest, most disgusting humans I've ever had the misfortune of having to waste an hour of my life with. I would literally rather chew my little finger off than waste any more time with you. How might you feel then?
Shocked and deflated.
Shocked, deflated. What other things might you feel? Who's feeling something different? I see a couple of you chuckling.
I'm feeling quite amused. Oh, sorry.
Okay. So you're feeling amused. The point
Yeah.
I'm making. Sorry, go for it.
No, that's it. I didn't realise my mic was off.
That's fine. So basically, the point I'm making.
I would question why you're doing the job.
Why I'm doing the job, absolutely.
Yeah.
The point is,
I don't care.
okay, yeah, this is sad and you don't care. Here's the
That's
point.
it.
In
I'm
both
not going to
You will lose
situations.
credibility.
Oh, sorry, say that again, Kasia.
I said you will lose credibility.
I would lose credibility, yeah. Here's the thing, in both scenarios, I have said a collection of words. You chose to react to those words in a way that matched your internal narrative. You could blame me for making you feel sad, upset, overwhelmed, making you laugh, make you feel happy, make you feel good or nice. I didn't make you feel that way. I said a collection of words. Your reaction to those words determined how you feel. Does that make sense? I know that's hard when you are having a moment of overwhelm, when you're feeling stressed and when something's causing a reaction to really, sorry, I just need to mute someone, to really understand that you have a choice, because often it feels like that experience, that person, that thing that was said is what is causing you to feel the way that you did. What I'm saying here, and not to make you feel bad, but to empower you, if we really take the time to understand how things are impacting us and the choice we have to react differently, you'll find that actually every reaction you have is totally within your control, which is why two people can have the same experience and have completely different reactions. And this is, again, just something to consider, is what can we do to start empowering ourselves, so particularly things that happen outside of ourselves, we can start to choose a reaction that serves us better and is less likely to lead our bridge to feel overwhelmed. But as I said, getting dressed, what you eat, what you consume, what you read, how much time you spend on social media, there are many things that are within your control. And if we start to consider the action we can take on things that was totally within our control, that there's obviously a sense of power within that. What about things that are outside of our control that may impact us every single day?
The weather.
Great, thank you, Pam. If we all sit here and hold hands and meditate and try and control the weather, we don't have that ability. We can't control the weather. So actually spending time, energy and effort, mental and emotional energy to try and change something that's outside of our control essentially is a fool's errand. So if the weather is something that is creating demand on your bridge and there's nothing you can do about it, you basically got something that's overloading you that you can't affect. And there could be other things that are happening outside of ourselves that you might be able to influence in some way, but you don't have really any kind of sense of control over. So it's not that we shouldn't be striving for a better world. It's not that we shouldn't be trying to change things for the better, but we also need to consider you have a finite amount of energy. Are you spreading yourself so thin that you are overwhelmed because you've taken on every issue, everything that's happening in the world and made it your problem? Does that make sense? So this is really where considering what am I going to invest my energy in? Do I have the capacity to take on board all of these different demands? It's where the phrase "don't spread yourself too thin" comes from, because many people do. That's where overwhelm comes from. You have literally spread yourself too thin. What about things that are partially within your control? What are things that you'd say are partially within your control? Okay, work. See, if you were saying sort of work, whether you stay or go. What else? Getting enough sleep. Again, if you are able to sort of be in control over when you switch off, there may be things outside your control that will influence that, but there's some element of control over that. Your health. In fact, so Zoe's mentioned your health. Yeah, potentially. Depends. It could be totally under your control. You may have full control over how you live your life and what you do. Some of you may not. But Steve, you mentioned relationships. Anything that involves collaboration between other people, whether that's a personal relationship, your family, your work colleagues, even this session, the outcome of this session is not fully under my control. Does that make sense? Even if I did show up as the best version of myself and I did everything I could to engage you and to ensure you got an opportunity to share and get involved in the discussion, can I fully control the outcome of this session, given there's 330 odd people here? No. Because it's a collaborative process. Anything that requires collaboration or other people to input into, you only have partial control over. And I saw in the chat someone mention what other people think of you. Absolutely. You can show up as the best version of yourself. That does not mean that they're going to view you in the way that you would like to them to view you. So yeah, when we've got this model in mind and we assess what is on our bridge and we focus on the things that are totally in our control, there's a sense of power there. And essentially this comes from, or maybe the prayer comes from this, it's a prayer known as the Serenity Prayer, which I'm just going to read out to you, because I think this is perfectly fitting to summarize this. It's utilized in the 12-step program. But it's also applicable in all walks of life. And I will just find it on my screen. Here we go. So it's grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So this isn't that we shouldn't strive for change and to really contribute to making the world and our lives a better place. That's not what I'm suggesting. But putting all your energy into something that you cannot change would be like putting all your effort in to move a brick wall. No matter how hard you push, the wall's not going to move. So you've wasted a huge amount of energy in something that is not in any way, shape or form going to be affected by the pressure that you're putting on it. And that's the difference. So when we're looking at our bridge, evaluate the things that are on our bridge, what's totally outside or partially within my control. Next thing I'd like to talk about is how do we prioritize our load? And I can't take full credit for this. This was originally derived from Dr. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is our take. This is our interpretation of the model. And it's what we call the prioritization grid. is looking at the things that are on your bridge and which of those are urgent and important. Urgent, it's happening right now. There's a deadline which is relatively short, and there are consequences to not doing it, i.e. it's important. So these are the most urgent, important tasks. They must be done now. These are the kind of things that if you don't do them, there will be serious consequences, and you might not be able to progress other things until this is action. It's like if you're at work and it's a report that needs to be completed for senior leadership and the deadline's 5 o'clock. It's like, the car's broken down and you're halfway to work. There's the fire alarm goes off and it's not a drill. So these are the kind of things that you need to do something right now, and there are consequences if you don't do them. Box 2 are things that are also important. In fact, things that are in box 2 are as important as things in box 1. The only difference is you just have a longer time frame. So things in box 2 essentially could be, for example, that very same report that needs to be completed for senior leadership. However, the deadline isn't 5 o'clock today, it's the end of July. So you got 6 weeks. This is the car needs a service. It's not broken down right now. There is things that need to be addressed, but they're not impacting you doing what you need to do today. So you could schedule a service appointment in a couple of weeks' time. This could be the fire drill that's planned, that we're scheduling for a couple of months' time. It's important, but it doesn't need to happen right now. So these are things that you can diarize. You can put in your schedule and come back to, which means, essentially coming back to our bridge analogy, you're taking it off the bridge now and parking it for a later date. So the way to be able to gauge if it's a box 2, anything in box 2, if you leave it for long enough, will become a number 1. So you leave a number 2 for long enough, it becomes a number 1. That's how you know it's a 2. Then we have things that are number 3s. Things that appear to, well, not appear to be, they are urgent, but the consequences of not doing it are nowhere near as important. So what do I mean by this? Something that is happening right now, but if you don't deal with it, there may be low or no consequences. Who can share with me an example of that? Something that's happening right now that's clawing on your attention, but if you don't do it, not much is going to happen, if anything at all. We could share an example. Okay, yeah, well, someone said social media. So your phone has just pinged and you've got a message on Instagram or TikTok. So it's urgent in the sense that ding, messages come in. There's a sense of urgency to respond to it. But if you don't do it, nothing's going to happen. Emails, same thing. How about the phones ringing? Ring, 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 ring. How many of you would feel a sense of urgency to answer the phone if it rings? I know this is changing. A lot of people don't bother answering the phone anymore. It's just let the voicemail deal with it. But, for many people, when the phone's ringing, it's like, I've got to answer it. And then you answer it, and it's like, hi, I'm calling about your mobile phone upgrade. I'm pretending to be from your service provider. I'm not really. I've just got your number from a database. I'm now going to proceed to try and sell you something that you didn't ask for, you don't need. And it's like, whoa, this is happening right now. But if I didn't answer that phone, nothing would happen in my life. Does that make sense? There are no consequences to that. What I'm saying is, again, it's taking my time, it's taking my attention. What about someone either dropping you a message, or in the days where we used to work in physical spaces, and some of you still may, someone's just come up to you, or someone's neighbour's just popped over. It's like, hi, just wanted to have a chat. Yeah, how are you doing? What's going on? And it's urgent, because when there's someone standing there in your face having a conversation with you, most of us would feel a sense of urgency to respond and engage with them rather than just ignore them and pretend like they're not there, right? As much as that might be the easy solution, most people wouldn't do that. So it's like, this is happening right now, but this is taking away from the things on my bridge that are actually damaging my bridge that I really do need to deal with. So this is really where we need to consider are these things that we could delegate or offload, or say to the person, you know, can we catch up at another point? Because it's urgent, but if you don't do it, there's no consequences, yet it's still taking up valuable capacity on your bridge. And then we've got the box fours, and these are the worst ones of them all. These are the things that there is no time frame attached to it. There's no sense of urgency, and they're not even important. So you don't need to do it by a particular time, but also if you don't do it at all, nothing may happen. These are the things you dump or delete. Time robbers, the things you don't need to be involved with. And actually, there are a lot of things like instant messages, that the amount of times that, particularly in a work setting, you might spend on Teams or on email, that are, you know, they're clawing on your attention, but no time frame and no consequences if you didn't deal with this. So this is something to consider. I know this isn't a perfect science, but this is just a model for you to then go back to your bridge and look at the things that are on your bridge and ask yourself, is it totally in my control? Is it outside my control? Do I have partial control over it? Is this something I need to do now? Is this something I could schedule? Get it off my bridge for now, but put it in the diary so it'll come back on my bridge in a couple of weeks. Is this something that I just avoid or diminish or delegate and ask someone else to deal with it? Or is it something I dump altogether? Just chuck it off the bridge into the river. So ask yourself, firstly, why am I doing this now? Then ask yourself, why am I doing this now? Then ask yourself, why am I doing this now? And why am I doing this now? Does that make sense? You change the inflection point on each of the words, and you've got 4 opportunities to re-explore what's on your bridge in a slightly different way. So hopefully that has given you a little bit of control and a little bit of power literally meaning the ability to do or act, to be able to positively affect the load on your bridge. But if you got to the point where your bridge is overloaded, there's already too much, and people keep coming up to you and it's like, yeah, can you take this? Can you deal with this? Can you help me with this? This little word, no. One of the shortest words in the English language, yet the hardest for many of us to express. Why is that? Why is this such a difficult word to utilize? Go for it, Lisa. You've got your hand up.
I think it's
Hi.
such a different. Yep. I think it's such a difficult word because it's there's the connotations of what the other person's going to think about you. And as a woman, I'm supposed to do things. I'm supposed to help people. I'm supposed to do whatever I can to make them feel okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're fearful of being judged, that people might think that we're not good enough, we can't cope, we're weak, we don't want to help people, we don't care. So there's a lot of stigma associated with this word no, because quite literally for many people it's a negative. It's a leave me alone, I can't help you, don't want to help you, or I can't deal with this. So we don't like to either hear or express a no. But there's challenges here, because if your bridge is overloaded and overwhelmed and you continue saying yes to people, it's only a matter of time before your bridge gets to the point where it can't cope and it will collapse. So I'm asking you to consider no as an appropriate, a relevant response where necessary. And as much as this is hard, when I wrote my book, The 10-Step Stress Solution, I put a whole chapter into the art of saying no. And the first thing I'm going to ask you to consider is no for most of us is a word, N-O. N-O spells no, right? You've all heard that before. Or does it? I'm going to ask you to reframe this to not be a word or a statement anymore, but to be an acronym. And the acronym stands for negotiation opportunity. What does that mean? So I'm not saying, no, leave me alone, I can't help you, I don't want to get involved, I don't want to support you. What I'm actually saying is, okay, you'd like me to take this new task, I'll help you with this thing. I just need you to understand right now, my bridge, I've got this, this, and this. Here's the consequences of not getting these things done. Here's the deadlines I'm working towards. I just need you to understand that so we can then consider, is what you're asking me to deal with a higher priority? Are there higher consequences than the things I'm currently working on? Ah, okay, they are. So what would you suggest I either deprioritize, take off my bridge, or stop doing to take this new task on? Or is there someone that can take off some of the things that are on my bridge so I can work on this new thing? Ah, what you're asking me to deal with is a lower priority than what I'm currently working on. Okay, fine. Can I schedule this, diarize this? Maybe we can come back to this in a week or 2 weeks' time once I've dealt with these particular issues. Oh, what you're asking me to deal with is of the same kind of priority and consequence of things I'm currently working on. Well, I don't have the capacity to cope with all these things. Someone will either need to help me with some of the things I'm currently working on or to take this new task off you. So essentially, as Cynthia's saying, we're using this as a way of opening up a dialogue. We are not in any way, shape, or form saying, I don't want to help you, leave me alone, go away. What we're saying is, let's open up a chat, a platform to have a chat and to discuss and agree the best way to get this done. So actually, the no stops being a negative and it becomes a positive because it's a positive opportunity to open up a space to have a discussion to agree appropriate outcomes. So that's a few things that you can do about the load itself. We talked about feeling overwhelmed when there's too much on the bridge. You've now got 3 things that you can do. We can look at what's totally in control, what's outside your control, what's partially in your control. We can look at prioritizing that load and, where necessary, say no as a way of negotiating an appropriate outcome. What I do want to finish with is to spend a couple of minutes to talk about, well, no matter what is going on with the load itself, there's also something you can do if you're feeling overwhelmed, just to really bring you back into your power, to bring you back to your center, to bring you back to this moment. And my lovely colleague, Abby, is going to talk us through a little exercise that we can do to essentially equip us to cope with those moments where we may feel overwhelmed. Over to you, Abby.
So I'm just going to do a short guided meditation and breath work. It'll only be a few moments, so I'll make sure we don't go over time. So just coming into a comfortable seat and then gently closing down the eyes. So allowing your shoulders to sink downwards, relaxing, unclenching the jaw, softening the body, and then turning your attention inwards to the breath, the in-breath and the out-breath. Just noticing where you feel the breath in your body. Just noticing how it feels for you in this moment right now. And on your next inhale, just seeing if you can draw the breath down deep into the belly, breathing in through the nose if that's accessible for you. And slowly filling up the lungs, just really feeling your belly expand. And then even more slowly breathing out, softening and relaxing, just releasing any tension. And slowly breathing in, filling up the lungs, drawing the breath down deep into the belly. Just letting your body know that it's safe to relax now. And very slowly breathing back out, softening your muscles, just letting go of any tension. And just a couple more of these in your own time. Slow and deep inhales. In through the nose and into the belly. An even slower exhale. Just allowing the body to come into a state of relaxation. And then tuning back into your surroundings. Just noticing how you feel. Maybe you feel more relaxed. And then whenever you're ready, just gently blinking open the eyes.
Thank you, Abby. Often when we are overwhelmed, we can have feelings of panic and anxiousness. You can't think clearly, can't problem solve, can't think laterally. We struggle to find solutions. And that can be very much tied to the fact that there's a lack of oxygenated blood in your brain. Just by stopping, even for a few minutes, as we just did, and thank you, Abby, for guiding us through that, to bring us back to the reality of this moment as it is, and just being present to your breath, it kind of provides you a bit of a reset moment. Like when your computer's overloaded and you reboot it and everything starts to work more efficiently again. So use your breath as a way of giving you a reboot moment, and that can be a really powerful in-moment antidote to dealing with overwhelming feelings. So obviously we had a big subject, and as ever, a tiny amount of time to cover it. Our job here in these monthly sessions is just to kind of give people some basic tools and a platform to discuss and share your feelings. In addition to what we do here within these sessions, on our website, there is a bunch of free resources that are available to all of you, including our new Little by Little journal that we launched in Stress Awareness Month. There's the weekly newsletter. If you don't get that already, I'm assuming many of you do, which is what led you to sign up. But if you don't, you can sign up for our weekly newsletter. Those links are going to be put into the chat by Abby in a moment. So there's lots of sort of topical conversations, practical wellbeing tips, and information about upcoming events, and also to ensure that you are the first to sign up for the webinars and other special events that we do. You'll find out about that through the newsletter. We also have just launched a new employees assistance program, which can be utilized in a business setting, but also in a community or an individual setting as well. If you'd like to find out more information about that, we will be dropping our email address in, so you can feel free to reach out to discuss that as well. If you do need immediate support, if you feel that you are struggling or you know someone that is, there are some resources there on the screen. You can call Samaritans. It's a really great free listening service. You've got advice and support on the Minds website. There's also Campaign Against Living Miserably. I have a call line. There's the Silver Line, which is a free helpline for older people. And also our website, which is www.stress.org.uk, where you'll find all of our free resources and ways that we can support you and your organizational community. Stress Prevent Society is a non-profit. It only continues to function through donations we provide from our corporate work, as well as donations we get from the general public. So if you are able to help us with our awareness campaigns or all the non-commercial work that we do, please do support us in any way that you can. And one of the other things that you can do to support us is spread the word. You know, we have an issue that is one of the biggest issues on the planet, but not enough people are taking action or talking about it. So we will be sharing the link to today's recording. You can pass that on and share that freely to anyone that's willing to listen. And also you can let people know about these sessions so they can attend future webinars. So we are almost out of time. We've got about a minute left, but there's an opportunity now. If anyone has any questions, comments, feedback, anything you'd like to discuss or share, now is an opportunity for you to do so. So let's see if we've got any hands up. So any questions, comments, or feedback are most welcome. I'd love to hear from you. And in terms of who's got their hands up, Caroline, you've got your hand up. Is there something you'd like to share? Caroline McGarity.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't get my mic off there.
No worries.
Or my mute off, sorry. Just in relation to your sort of last question there about what do you do to feel grounded and try and combat feeling overwhelmed. For me, and the biggest tip that I could give anybody is to go and do something fun. Mm-hmm. Because it just immediately takes you away from what's going on. You might not immediately be able to go and do something, but for me, if I was having a really bad day at work, I would maybe go and book bowling with my daughter and go and take her, or go to the arcades and just waste money and just have fun. And it just serves to remind me that there's a bigger purpose in life.
Absolutely.
Do you know, having fun with my daughter is more important than feeling absolutely overwhelmed at work.
You know, it's one of those things that when you get to the end of our lives and reflect back, you're not going to remember those times where you're stressed and overwhelmed. You're going to remember, you know, reminiscing on the times that you could have had, or the more time that you could have spent having fun and doing things that bring you joy in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And as they say that, you know, laughter is the best medicine, right, Carol Ann? Like, you know, but, laughing isn't just something that feels good. It actually changes our physiology and our emotional and psychological state. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily even need to cost any money. You know, what can you do that's going to create joy, laughter, and fun in your life? I like that.
Yeah, I always remember a midwife in the early days of my daughter being born, and I was feeling really overwhelmed. I had a newborn, only one child, but I had a newborn, and I was trying to cope with everything. I felt like my house was getting messed up, and I've only met this woman once in my entire life, but what she said with me will just stick with me forever. Nobody was ever on their deathbed wishing they had cleaned their house more. And I thought, you know, that is so, so true. So I've always remembered that.
Absolutely. Nobody also sits there wishing they worked harder or made more money. You know, these are things that we spend a lot of our time and energy on. Nobody sits there saying to themselves, I wish I spent more time on Instagram or TikTok. Yet that's what many people seem to find themselves doing. So why not actually do things that bring genuine joy into your life? So yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. I'll take a couple more shares before we close. We are a little bit over time. Marie Archer, is there something you'd like to share?
Hiya. No, it
Hi.
wasn't really sharing. It was just a question, if you don't
Sure.
mind. So you know you've got your prioritization grid, which I really found helpful. I do try and prioritize things, but what I find is that even though I've got things in my diary, I will just constantly think about everything. So is there any ways or techniques that you can just stop yourself from just thinking, in 3 weeks I've got to do that report, or you know, because I will just have things that need to be done in like 6 months and I keep still thinking about them.
So you can't stop your thoughts. Well, you can, but that's probably not something that we want to do until we get to the point we don't need to have thoughts anymore, if that makes sense. What you can do is start to train your mind to be more focused on what is happening right here, right now. And that Marie, is basically what's known as mindfulness. So mindfulness literally means training yourself to be present in this moment with no judgment. There are many different ways to approach this, and that could be through meditative practices or time in nature or observational practice, where just being present to our breath, very much in the way that Abby demonstrated for us a few minutes ago. But as you know, we train ourselves to be more present and to be more mindful, you'll find that those times where your brain is wandering off to things that happen in 6 months' time, you'll find it easier to bring yourself back to this moment. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll take the last one from Jackie Campbell before we close the meeting. Hi, Jackie. Oh, we may have lost Jackie. And then, if not, the last one I have on the list is Lee. I haven't got your surname, Lee, but if there's something you'd like to share, here's your opportunity.
Hello.
Hi, go for it.
I suppose for me personally, it would be how to stop catastrophizing. So sometimes you have kind of stood up for yourself for the first time, you've scrounged up the courage to say no. And there's been really bad backlash, like say at work, where I think one time I broke down and had to take some time off work. And when I came back, a lot of my jobs had been given away. And now you're prioritizing all tasks just so that bad things don't happen. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I find it hard to figure out what's important, because it's not just about the task, but what might happen if I don't do this or if I say no.
Absolutely. And catastrophic thinking is definitely an indicator of overwhelm as well, because we're focused on the problems and where things go wrong rather than the solutions. So actually, it's not too dissimilar to the suggestion for the previous participant around how can we bring ourselves to this moment on the things that we do have control over, if that makes sense, and training your mind to be focused on what is happening right now. Because if we're getting anxious and catastrophizing about things that can happen or could go wrong, you're thinking about future events. I'm pretty sure it's Mahatma Gandhi that said 90% of the things that we worry about never come to pass. So we're utilizing a lot of mental and emotional energy on things that might not happen. So again, this comes back to, as Lee, we spoke about the top principle. You might not be able to necessarily control all aspects of the outcomes of particular action, but you can assert control over the things that are totally within your control. So that's where I would ask you to consider how you can utilize some of these models and kind of this practice of bringing yourself back to the present moment to better equip you to cope with what is real and happening right now rather than things that may or may not happen in the future. Does that make sense?
Yes, thanks.
You're most welcome. So we are over time. Thank you all so much for joining today's program. It's always so mind-blowing for me that we always getting on average 300, 400 people that show up to these sessions. They wouldn't happen without you. We look forward to seeing you at next month's session. But in the meantime, if there's any way that we can help or support you, feel free to reach out. Have a wonderful rest of the day and month ahead, and we'll see you all very soon.